Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we are here to discuss the final round of the X²O Trophy in Brussels, and with me here to do that is Issam. Hey Issam.
Hey everybody.
As said, it was time for the final round of the X²O Trophy taking place on the university campus in Brussels. Not my favorite course, not my favorite race, but nevertheless Issam will tell us what happened in the men's race.
Well, I don't know if it's going to be the favorite race of Vanthournhout. The one that won last year here was not going in a very good start. Missed his pedal completely at the start, and then all his chances of getting on the podium today were completely gone. Was that then all the incidents that we had in the first lap? No, Daan Soete and Lars van der Haar get down on the very long off-camber that we have here in Brussels. And then all of a sudden we have Laurens Sweeck that is in the leading position in the first lap. Michael Vanthournhout, however, has very good legs and is able to bridge that gap. Behind them, Jens Adams and Eli Iserbyt are together. Iserbyt tries to bridge that gap as well himself with Jens Adams in his wheel to go to his two teammates, but is eventually not able to do so. Jens Adams then has to take over from Eli Iserbyt. Iserbyt that obviously is not going to chase his teammates for the remainder of the race and sits in the wheel of Jens Adams. Vanthournhout in front takes over from Sweeck and is then able to crack Sweeck in a way. Sweeck is not able to follow the wheel of Vanthournhout, and Vanthournhout finds himself in pole position to win this race. Sweeck is then falling back to Jens Adams and Eli Iserbyt and is able to stick with them for a moment, but then eventually has to give up on that position as well. So then we have Jens Adams and Eli Iserbyt fighting for the podium positions. Adams that tries his best to make sure that he can crack Iserbyt, but Iserbyt was just a little bit better. And in the last lap, there was just not really an answer from Jens Adams on Eli Iserbyt. Iserbyt securing the second spot, and Adams is third in the last race of the X²O Badkamers Trofee. But in the end, Michael Vanthournhout, the winner in Brussels.
Yeah, quite the ride of Vanthournhout today. I mean, the race itself was a bit boring in my opinion. I just don't really like it. But that doesn't discredit the performance of Vanthournhout. He was simply the strongest. I don't think there is really a lot to say about the performance itself. I think that he was the best, especially when Sweeck made a couple of smaller mistakes, but also just considering the general picture of the race, he was in control as soon as he was in the lead, didn't need to push too hard. So I think just the strongest, the freshest, the best on the day. But as said, I thought the race was a tad boring. I also said I don't really like this race, and I will elaborate a bit on that, not too long. But I'm not a fan of the course, no spectators allowed. For once, actually not due to COVID restrictions, but because it's on the university campus and the students have exams next week, so they need to prepare on campus. They want to study there. And in the previous editions, they were complaining because the event, the cyclocross event, was causing too much noise, which meant they couldn't concentrate. So that was banned. The course itself, well, not great either, just too much. Not really a fan of putting 20,000 off cambers and putting 40 corners that don't need to be there. Placement of the barriers didn't make sense. A lot of unprotected road furniture on a cyclocross course, which is really rare to see. Also these stairs that went up and down, or it was not really stairs, more maybe a pump track. But yeah, it was just not my course. Not my favorite race, but nevertheless, I don't want to discredit the performance of Vanthournhout because this is just a personal preference, and I think Vanthournhout, as said, was just the strongest on the day.
No, indeed, there's not much to say about the ride of Vanthournhout. He was for a moment in second place, following Sweeck, who was in prime position to have a good race and to finish on the podium, but just not really having the legs. Vanthournhout did have the legs, and there were some talks already with the Belgian media in Gavre that there were some talks that Vanthournhout was aiming for Brussels to be good, and well, it appears to be that when he puts his money on a race, then he's able to also finish it off. And I think for him at the end of the season to get a victory, that's always super motivating and a nice way of ending your season and to take the rest period and focus on the season that is lying ahead of you.
How would you then think that Vanthournhout looks back upon this season? 3 victories, no classification wins in terms of general classifications, but he did get some beautiful wins. How do you think he looks back on the season?
Well, I think he can be quite positive about his season. I think there were some races where, we saw Vanthournhout that was not really in good shape. I don't. Yeah, obviously, I think he had some issues as well personally. So yeah, I think that might have played a role in some of the results that he had that were not so great. But I think that overall, yeah, he had quite an okay season in the end. Not the best and the greatest of results. I think that the World Championship he would have liked to be on the podium, but was just not able to do so. And yeah, then in the end, I think then if you win the race at the end of the season, it always makes your season a little bit better than it maybe is. But I think for him, it's definitely a good season and something to build up from also last season, a bit in line with his results of last season as well.
3 wins, as said, 14 podiums, and I think in the top 10 of, I think, almost all of the races he did, or at least I think he did more than 30 races, and he's been in the top 10 a lot. Of course, ending in the top 10 is something we expect from him, and it's just been a very typical Michael Vanthournhout season. Last year was a bit better due to the fact that he was leading the World Cup for a while, won 3 races then as well, in somewhat more dominant fashion, and that was of course also the first time he won a classified race. But yeah, it's the Vanthournhout we know, very consistent, doesn't win a lot of races, especially not the big ones, always on or around the podium. So yeah, I would agree with you, Issam, he should be happy with this performance, and I think overall the Powerhouse team can be happy about the season they've had, both on the men's side and the women's side. Iserbyt made it a 1-2 again for the Powerhouse team. I think it's for about the 6th or 7th time this season that has happened. So Iserbyt also just a solid ride in a classification that didn't matter to him anymore.
Yeah, I think Iserbyt was having a strong race, and I think a crucial moment in the race that he was not able to bridge the gap to Vanthournhout and Zweek. Was a little moment when he was when he had Jens Adams in his wheel and he tried to bridge the gap, but I guess he kind of realized that it was going to be hard to bridge it and that he was not going to be able to do it alone, and that Adams was going to sit in his wheel and make the best out of it from that. And yeah, then you have to decide to not go in the front and to sit in the wheels. And Adams had a fantastic race, and I'm very happy for him that he was able to finish on the podium, because it could have been one of those races that went well, but then you finish 4th. So I think it's super to see him on the podium.
What was interesting was that in the pre-race interview, Iserbyt said that he's going to participate in at least one mountain bike World Cup this summer. What do you think of that decision? Do you maybe know what's behind that?
Well, it was definitely a surprise for me when I heard it. So because we had those talks about his road ambitions, and that they were thinking that doing some more road and some serious races is going to improve his overall performance in the cyclocross. Now mountain bike all of a sudden pops up, and not only there are some cyclocross riders that do mountain bike in the summer, but he was talking about at least participating in one World Cup. That's something different. So he is definitely taking it serious in a way, and they want to do something in mountain bike. If I think that is a good idea, that has a lot of pros in my opinion, because I think mountain bike is a very good sport. It's just having that little bit more endurance than cyclocross has. It creates for you great punch. So I think there are a lot of pros in it, but it depends on what they are thinking of the campaign in the mountain bike, what they are willing to achieve with that. And I'm looking quite interesting to see what he's able to do on the mountain bike, but I wouldn't expect too much from it, but it's always it's always interesting to see what someone can do in a new discipline.
Yeah, I agree with you, Issam. I was also very surprised because exactly what you said. He was going to up his road program, or at least there was speculation about that, also created by his own team manager Jurgen Mettepenningen. Around the time of the Koppenberg, they were saying, yeah, but it's not fair to think Iserbyt can compete with Van Aert and Van der Poel because they race the Tour and this makes them better cyclocross riders. Personally, I strongly disagree with this assessment, because Van der Poel and Van Aert are good cyclocross riders because they are extremely talented. Of course, the road will maybe give them a couple of percentage points more, but Iserbyt has nothing to do in the Tour de France, in my opinion. His road results are not great. They were hyping him based on his result in the Belgian Championships last year. But last year the Belgian Championships were not a normal one. They were on a weird moment. There was a major breakaway that went to the end, and Iserbyt was in that. But he didn't make the top 10 from that. Then he was racing against riders from the Alpecin Phoenix team like Dries de Bond, who became Belgian champion there. He didn't impress me when he was in that break. In fact, he has never really impressed me on the road. So I think that if he would ride the Tour, it would just be a peloton filler. Would it make him stronger? Probably a bit, but would that make him at the same level as Van der Poel and Van Aert all of a sudden? I don't think so. I think it's interesting that he's now going to do mountain biking. Will that help him? It's a bit hard to tell, because just like it goes on the road, David van der Poel also races high-level road races on the road, and that doesn't necessarily make him a very great cyclocross rider. We've seen that with other riders as well, and the same goes for mountain biking. I mean, it's probably going to be a fun challenge for him. I have no expectations for him. It will be interesting to see which World Cup he does, how he does there. We'll probably cover it in the podcast. But it will be interesting. Will it make him a much better cyclocross rider? That's up for us to decide. There are probably the results to tell and his own interpretation of that. But I don't think that it will make a major influence on his level. Somebody who did put in a very good ride today was Jens Adams. He ended third. He was fighting with Iserbyt, who we just talked about. He was also fighting with Zweig, got a bit of team tactics used against him, but overall a solid ride from the rider of the Hollebeek Hoeve team, and I think it's not completely unexpected, because last year was also fighting for the podium here in Brussels, so it's fair to say he loves this course.
It comes alive when you have these kind of parcourses, I guess, when you have to turn 699 times, and yeah, I think that is something he loves. He loves to play around with the bike, and then he comes alive. And don't forget, one of the things that also help is that it is at the end of the season. So Toon Aerts was not there in the front. Van der Haar was also tangled up in that crash. So then you get in that position, but you still have to make use of that. And it obviously isn't hard if you have three guys of Powerhouse that are there in front of you in a way. So I think that he did a great job. He did what he had to do, because Iserbyt wasn't going to pull, so he did everything kind of right. Couldn't really do anything else. And in the last couple of laps, you saw that Adams was really struggling, and Iserbyt then went away, and he couldn't really answer that. But I think that he can be super proud about the performance today, and for him and the sponsor that he has, it's important to perform well and to be on the podium in a televised race, in a broadcasted race, because in Belgium they can see it for free. So yeah, this is for him huge today to be on the podium.
Let's look at the entire top 10 then to see who ends just behind Jens Adams. It was Vanthournhout ahead of Iserbyt and Adams. Then we find the European champion Lars van der Haar, who recovered pretty decent after that tumble with Daan Soete in the first lap. 5th place went to Laurens Zweig ahead of Timon Ruwec and Thijs Aerts. 8th went to Kevin Kuhn ahead of Toon Aerts, and then the 10th place went to Vincent Baestaans. Couple of names here. I mean, of course, again, Ruwec and Kuhn solid rides. Ruwec again a bit better, but we've discussed these riders in our previous podcast. Same goes for Thijs Aerts. So let's take a moment to talk about Laurens Zweig. We've already said that Vanthournhout, his race today is kind of telling for his season. Solid, and sometimes it comes out. For Zweig, it's also kind of telling for his season. A 5th place today when he was in the leading position kind of sums up his season, isn't it?
Yeah, it did, and in a hard way as well, because I think a Zweig that was in a good shape and that was having good legs wouldn't have missed out on this opportunity, because it was a great opportunity in the first lap. It was gone. I mean, there's nothing else to say. It was just gone, and even if Vanthournhout would be able to bridge that gap, then they could have ride off to the sunset together, and then in the race will then decide who will be first and who will be second. But it was in theory a 100% guaranteed podium, because there was no real threat for this podium. But then in the end, yeah, the legs were just not really there, and it sums up a little bit for his season, because there were a couple of races where he had this kind of good start but not a great finish. And I think overall this season isn't the greatest of seasons. He obviously at the beginning of the season had his child was born, and he became a dad, so maybe that is also a factor that played in. And I'm trying to seek for some excuses, but in the end of the day, it was just a poor season for him, and yeah, we have to hope. And I'm looking forward to see what he can do next season, because I think that if he's going to continue this line, is definitely not going the right direction.
Another name we have to talk about is Toon Aerts. He ended 9th after a shocker of a start, going over his bars because he missed his pedal, crashing, starting from last and then eventually moving through the quite big field still. I think there were about 40 to 50 riders today at the start. I think 40 to be fair. But yeah, overtaking those riders, coming in the top 10, but there wasn't much on the line for him. He already secured the win in this classification, and I think that's important for himself, for his sponsors, and also for his season, because without the win in the X²O trophy, it would have been a pretty poor season for Aerts. Not good in the World Cup, not winning the Super Prestige, and then eventually this is kind of saving his season and overall a decent ride, but there wasn't much on the line today, so overall, yeah, what can we make of his ride? Just yeah, a decent recovery ride, nothing more, I guess.
Someone that was having troubles to bring a good position to a great end as well was, I think, Corné van Kessel. He was one of the guys. He was in the top 4, I think 3rd, going into the second lap. So he was quite good in front, and then fell back completely. Obviously, also had an issue with his bike. I think a puncture or something. Had to step off his bike, lost some time there as well, but I think at that point he was already around Philippe Orts outside the top 10. So yeah, it was definitely not his ride, and yeah, quite weird to see that he can start quite well, but then he's not able to finish it off in a decent position. And maybe that's a bit in line with the end of the season, that the riders are just looking forward to that rest period.
Yeah, well, there's definitely something going on with Corné van Kessel. I don't know if this goes all the way back to the crash in Baal, but after Baal, his Dutch championship wasn't exactly what he'd expected from it. Flamanville and Hammer were decent, but then DNF and Hoge Heide, but he wasn't in a great position. Fayetteville, similar scenario as to today. The same scenario played in Lille, the same scenario played in Maldegem, same scenario played yesterday, and the same scenario played today. I think for Corné van Kessel at this point, it's probably just wise to end this season and then go up next year again, and then start to build up with his new team under the Roodhoofd umbrella. Let's talk about the women's race then. Denise Betsema was quickly into the lead on the first lap, dropping Annemarie Worst already. Where was Lucinda Brandt, you might ask? She had a bad start. A shocker of a start actually. She was around 20th place. However, Brandt was quickly to overtake other riders, move into second and drop Annemarie Worst already. But then there was a crucial mistake by Brandt on the off-camber. She carried too much speed over some bumps there and crashed. It was really to be then Denise Betsema. She would not be seen by the rest again, and she went on to claim her first victory since, wait for it, Zonhoven, since October. Very long time without victory for Denise Betsema. Brandt eventually managed to get back into second position and claim that, but behind there was an interesting battle for the third place. Manon Bakker was fighting with Ribeiro and Annemarie Worst. Worst, who dropped back from a mistake, and it was mistake after mistake after mistake. At that point for Worst, she would end 5th. Ribeiro and Bakker were fighting together. Bakker was already at the front until she had a puncture in the second lap, then eventually managed to come back and overtake Ribeiro to claim that 3rd place. So that makes the podium Betsema, Brandt, Bakker. Quite a refreshing sight for once to see not Brandt actually winning, because the only rider who has been able to beat Brandt recently is Marianne Vos. Betsema back on top, as said, for the first time since Zonhoven. I think she must be happy and take some positive energy out of this to end her season with.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it looked also way better than it had been looking in a couple of races this season, and I think that is definitely a positive note to end your season with, which, in my opinion, it was quite a consistent season with some good races, but it was never. You were always waiting for that moment that you would say, "Oh, now it's a peak condition. Now we are looking to a Betsema that is able to bring up the fight to Brandt." And it doesn't necessarily mean that she always has to win from Brandt, but We just missed that element of getting on that level, and that was a bit of a shame, because I think that she definitely is able to do that. A parcours of today which suited her in a way, and I think that Brand after the crash was just not really able to take the risk that she normally takes, and then on pure technique I think Betsema just has that natural gift of going through the corners just a little bit more fluent in a way. So I think that in the end, not a surprise winner in a way. Brand is not really someone that is super on this parcours. You cannot get rid of your power, and then in the end Betsema was the one that won.
Yeah, only a few sections where you could really put down the power. And for Brand, I mean, of course, Brand is also only human. She already won 19 races this season, which is really a lot. So not ashamed to lose to Betsema once. And I think, as you said, it's for Betsema important to end the season on some sort of positive note. Of course, missing the World Championships, a big letdown. Then, of course, in Lille, when she was still fighting for this classification, to then have an injury and getting stitches in her finger, it's also a letdown. So I think that overall this is something that Betsema needs. I wouldn't be surprised if she wins one of the 2 races next weekend as well, because I can see the tiredness is starting to kick in for Lucinda Brand. I mean, it's something you see quite with some riders, where some riders at this point are getting really tired. Other riders who are a bit fresher, for instance like Worst, like Van Alphen, they have the opportunity to get some slightly better results now, also with a significant amount of riders ending their season. One of these riders that does improve in these last weeks is Manon Bakker. She ends 3rd here, gets a podium. She was actually saying this season might be a bit too short for me because I'm finally getting into form after an injury at the beginning of the season. I immediately get 2 questions. First of all, when your performances are disappointing in the beginning of the season, why don't you communicate that there is an injury going on that's affecting you? And second of all, how come that if you are injured you keep on racing, like she said was the case? 2 very weird things in my opinion.
Yeah, it's indeed a bit weird. I mean, today was for her, I think, the perfect day to try and get that podium, and she made great use of that in a way. I mean, we could see in the last couple of races there was that tendency that everything was going better. She started the season, not with the greatest of results, and also when she went to races in France, it was not really great. It just wasn't really coming this season, and now in the end it seems that a couple of races are going a little bit more her way, and also someone that is, finishing quite a disappointing season in a positive note, and that can help you a lot going into next season and in your preparation for sure.
Let's look at our entire top 10 then. 3 Dutch riders on the podium once again: Betsema, Brand, Bakker. Just off the podium, Marion Norbert Ribeyrolles ahead of Annemarie Worst and Aniek van Alphen. Then 2 British riders, Backstedt ahead of Kay, and then the top 10 is rounded out by Verdonschot and Helene Clauzel. Again, pretty similar names in the top 10 once again today. I think one that does stand out a bit is Ribeyrolles. I am interested to see what she can do in the future. I have the feeling that the talent is there, but that there is just some reason that not everything comes out every week. You see glances of her talents from time to time, but then at the same time, on other race days, it's just absolutely nowhere with Ribeyrolles. I don't know what's the case there. I don't think we can know that because there's not really communication around that. We might reach out to her and try and speak with her about it over the off season. We've tried asking questions, but for her it says, struggling with COVID, having a bad summer last year, never really being able to recover from that. Maybe a bit of a mental thing there as well. But it will be interesting to try and see if we can hear from her over the summer, and that's something that we'll try and work on. So that's about Ribeyrolles. Worst today, a bit disappointing result, but Issam, it went from bad to worse today for Worst.
Yeah, it did. It was just, in the beginning of the race, I had some hope that she was going to be able to bring that fight for a podium, but it didn't go her way whatsoever. I mean, she was complaining about the tires, mistake, crash. I mean, those things just don't really help, and then you end up in this negative spiral, and when it's the end of the season, you're like, I just want to get over it with this race. Bakker and Ribeyrolles are able to bridge, and then you know that the podium is kind of gone, and I think the motivation then goes completely out, and you're just trying to finish and forget the race as quickly as possible.
Yeah, certainly not her day. I think in a normal situation she would have fallen back a bit further as well. Backstedt today with another strong ride, ending 7th. She had a puncture as well. Without that she could have potentially competed for a podium, although I think that would have been a stretch. I would think she would have been more around the 4th place of Ribeiro. Nevertheless, a strong ride by her. And I think eventually the same goes for Laura Verdonschot, who gets 9th place today. Solid result by her. Let's hope that she can have a better season next year as well. Well, Issam, I think we've covered it then today. Thank you for being here to talk about the final round of the X²O trophy, where Lucinda Brandt, almost forgot to mention it, secured the overall win ahead of Denise Betsema and Annemarie Worst. Alvarado wasn't here today, if you're wondering that. She was sick. Issam, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll be back in the midweek actually with a podcast with Zoe Backstedt. We speak with her and she will be talking about her season and her world title. Next weekend, Issam and I will be back for the final weekend of cyclocross racing. Then we covered everything from Lokeren to Oostmalle, except one race that we didn't do, and that was the Ethias Cross in Essen, as we were in Val di Sol then and couldn't make it, plus the race really wasn't that important / interesting. Nevertheless, thank you for sticking with us throughout this season, and hopefully you guys will still tune in for the final episode next week of this cross season when we talk about Oostmalle and Sint-Niklaas. Thanks for listening.